Hey there everybody, it's markcrilley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Today's video is all about color. I am going to be drawing or really coloring in a peacock feather. You've seen me draw it already, and indeed this is not really one of these videos where I teach you how to draw a peacock feather, although I suppose I could do such a video someday if you want me to. Really, it's going to be more about the coloring process. People like to know the size I'm working at, so I put this square in place. It is 4 inches. On all sides. Hopefully you can still see that. That works out to 10 centimeters. And what I'm going to do now is pull out a brown colored pencil. This is a Mitsubishi colored pencil, but as I always say, I don't think that the brand name is so important with these things, so there's no need to rush out and try to find the exact type of pencil that I'm using. There's going to be a lot of time lapse in this video. That's just the way it goes. My apologies. But what I want to do is just give you a few basic principles that I apply when using colored pencils, maybe some more general principles about color, no matter what different tool you're using. And maybe the first thing that I want to talk about is the importance of starting a little bit light, which is indeed what you see me doing here. It's always easier to go darker on top of something that's too light, a little trickier to lighten up something that's gone a bit too dark. So that's maybe the number one thing you're going to see me doing. I'm going to do all of these sort of outside feathers. Actually, that's not the right word, is it? There's probably a word for the individual line that composes a feather. I'm not going to apologize for not knowing that word, folks. It's a pretty rare word, but I will lay odds someone has already typed away the answer in the comment section, and if you have, I thank you for educating me in that regard. I'm going to go ahead and continue with this process all around this sort of exterior area of the peacock feather. Alright, so I thought I'd come in here and maybe offer another tip about coloring, maybe drawing in general, and that is to pay attention to the speed of the stroke of your pencil across the page. You can see me moving the pencil quite quickly, and the reason I'm doing that is that when you move the pencil at a high speed, you tend to get a very smooth line. There's no time for the sort of trembling of your wrist to play into it. It's almost like a kind of momentum kicks in, and the line has to just be smooth. Now, of course, you give up a lot in accuracy, and you will occasionally mess it up, by drawing too fast. But you're constantly, as an artist, I think, sort of making a decision about how quickly should I put this line down on the page. Very slowly when you need accuracy, especially with like a short line. But with these longer lines, in fact, I'm going to stand up right now, and maybe it changes the effect of the audio. I'm standing up so as to get a little more comfort in terms of making these lines down here. And I would advise you, in a way, this actually is maybe compensating for me having taped this paper down. I'm having to move myself around to get the sort of pivot point of my wrist to flow more naturally. Anyway, I feel like I've done enough of this. I'm going to grab the other pencils to start moving into the more brightly colored area here in the middle. So I'm about to try to do this area that is a fairly luminescent, almost day glow kind of green. And so what I'm going to attempt is to lay down a sort of background color of yellow, and then go on top of it with green, and thereby hopefully create this sort of luminescent effect that you see in actual peacock feathers. And I think sometimes this idea of putting down a background color and then building on top of it can be useful for a variety of drawings, especially when you want a sort of complexity of color. Basically, anytime you're using just one pencil or one type of paint, especially like straight out of the tube kind of paint, and you're not mixing it at all, you do run the risk of a kind of flatness, certainly a lack of complexity, almost by definition. So let's see, I'll try to do a little of this. I'll stop right here for now with the yellow, and I'm going to switch now to this green. This is a Sanford very thin Prismacolor. And going on top, really I want the final color to read as green. But by getting that yellow underneath it, hopefully it will create this sort of day glow effect that I'm talking about. Well, I am going to keep things moving. I would love if this video is substantially shorter than a lot of the ones that I have uploaded recently. So let's go ahead and kick it into time-lapse. Now I'm going to be doing a different color here of orange, but a similar kind of an effect where I'm trying to lay down an orange base color, and then I'm going to probably build on top of it with a bit of brown. Again, to get a complexity of color, have it sort of seem like it's glowing orange. But I thought my thing that I would talk about now in terms of tips is when coloring, when shading, pay attention to the direction of your lines. You know, with the peacock feather, you've got this natural thing to pay attention to, the sort of grain of the feather, that all of the lines are flowing in a particular direction. But very often, you know, even when you're just drawing an object, you have a choice in terms of the direction that the lines are going, and it's always worth stopping and thinking about, you know, what will assist my drawing in terms of the direction of the lines. Am I choosing a direction that's sort of fighting against the natural flow of this object? Most often, artists choose the direction of their lines to sort of assist with the three-dimensional effect of conveying the surface of an object. So, but you know, again, I always want to hold back from saying you must always do this. You know, no, there is almost no must always, in my opinion, when it comes to art. It's just something to consider. I do think you should be thinking about. You shouldn't just be doing things out of habit. That's maybe the one thing that I stand behind. Everything should be a choice. You should be thinking about what, you know, like I said, what direction do I want to make these lines go in? So that's my little one point of learning about not just coloring, but maybe shading in general. Think about the direction of the lines that you're making. Well, I'm going to go ahead and kick it into time-lapse to add a little more sort of darkness around these various areas. Then I'll be back with a few more tips. All right, so now is probably a good time to talk about how when I need precision, I'm not doing the long sweeping movements with these super fast strokes. I bring my fingers down close to the tip of the pencil, and I'm going for the more precise work, focusing on getting those lines right where I need them to be. Probably this is the way I'm holding my pencil when I get into the realm of details. And that I'm holding it back further when I need these long sweeping lines, maybe when I'm sort of building things up at the beginning. So much of this comes by way of instinct, and you're doing it as an artist without even thinking about it. So there's a challenge in teaching this stuff, to sort of notice stuff that you kind of picked up naturally over time. And again, I always hesitate to act as if everybody ought to draw the same way that I do. But anyway, suffice to say, in general, the speed at which you lay down the lines, the point at which you hold the pencil, all of this stuff is resulting in different types of lines. And most professional artists are focusing on that, at least to some degree, so as to get the lines that they need. I'm going to hold off on this interior section. It should be a fun part of the illustration to do because of the, it's going to be a bright blue, bluish kind of purple. Bluish, you know, bluish, purplish kind of, it's been a while since I Brought in the Brooklyn guy to talk about bluish, purplish stuff. Anyway, I'm going to hold off on that. I'm going to go ahead and start darkening up. You're going to see me darkening up some of that initial line work, whether it be with brown or dark green in this green area. And then we'll come back and maybe talk a little bit about getting that bright bluish purple color that I'm talking about. All right, so I thought right now I would talk about the importance of contrast. You can see I've brought out my trusty black Prismacolor, which is giving me these nice dark blacks that I need, and you know, important with coloring, but also important with drawing in general. Generally speaking, getting a good amount of contrast into your illustration will make it look better, just, you know, from a distance. I think sometimes things look good when you're right up on top of it, but then you stand back and it sort of fades a little, and you just can't. Everything becomes indistinct. And when the darks are really dark and the lights are really light, it just helps things pop. Not true of absolutely all styles of illustration, for sure, but it's worth considering, as with all of this stuff. Pay attention to the amount of contrast in your drawing and see what happens when you beef it up a little. Make the darks a little darker. Well, the next thing is to finally get into this central portion of blue, and I'm going to go ahead and grab a Prismacolor. This is one of the premier, the sort of softer versions, and as I said before, I'm always paying some attention to the direction of these lines. In the case of the peacock's feather, you have a very established direction, and the colors are shifting across a single filament. I guess I'll call them filaments. I dub you Sir Filament of Peacock Feather. These lines are, you know, this is presumably one continuous line that keeps changing colors so as to create this pattern, almost like weaving in a way. Although that's not a good comparison, is it? The yarn isn't changing color. Okay, forget what I said about weaving. That doesn't make any sense at all, Mark. In any case, I'm building up, and I'm kind of doing the same thing that I was doing with the green, trying to get a base of light blue here underneath that I can build on top of. Eventually, all these little white bits, which is to say the page beneath, I think will gradually be covered up by various types of blue. But as I said before, when you're going for a complexity of color, it can be helpful to just mix it up. Start with one blue, which is what I'm doing here, get a sort of a base layer of this one blue, and then start building on top of it with others. I want this to get a little bit purpley, so definitely we'll be using more of a ultramarine, I believe is what they call it. That's slightly got a little more red, a hint of red in it, to start heading towards purple. Well, let's go ahead and I'll keep beefing this up. This area here in the middle is going to actually go very close to black, so that'll be one of the last things that I do. All right, well, we're very nearly done with this, but we're going to enter into what I have always called the final polishing phase, in which I sort of go over the entire drawing and keep tweaking things, changing things, sort of doing all those little last nitpicky details that I may have missed along the way, and that will bring us to the end. So let me go ahead and I'll pull back so you can see the entire image as I do the final polishing phase, and then we'll be back with a few final words. Alright, well, this is the kind of illustration that I could just keep working on for hours, you know, and I suppose I got to wrap it up at some point. I would say the big thing about this so-called final polishing phase is that I'm heightening contrast, I'm adding complexity to colors, and basically just trying to achieve a sort of balance in the illustration between all the different elements. And, you know, once I've reached that feeling of balance, then I feel that the illustration is nearly complete. And that's when it's time to lay down the pencil. But before I do that, I want to thank anyone who has supported me by getting any of my books, like The Realism Challenge, my book on hyper-realism, The Drawing Lesson, a new book of mine, a graphic novel that teaches you how to draw, and my very newest is, of course, Mastering Manga 3. Super, super grateful to anyone who supports me by getting those books. But let me go ahead and lay down this pencil. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. And I'll be back with another one real soon.